indulge in, Billy. Now's the time.
Well, son, I guess you're right. I am a butthead. Hey, Bill.
Welcome to another episode of the 13 Nights of Halloween. This is Tim. With me tonight, Johnathan. You want to go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, hey everybody. My name's Johnathan. Currently reside in the state of Texas in good old DFW. Went to art school with Tim, good buddies. We enjoyed movies together, and I've seen lots of films, and I'm a big media person, so I've got a lot of seen and a lot I like to say about all of it.
That's why I thought you would be the perfect person to reach out for this one. Yeah, I think the last time I actually physically saw you was at my wedding almost 3 years ago now, which is crazy.
Yeah, that is right.
Which is crazy. Yep.
Great wedding though.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. I was glad to see you could make it, genuinely. All right. So tonight we are talking about Society. It was released in 1989 in Europe, released years later in the US. It's not really super well-known movie. In recent years, it's kind of developed a cult following, and we'll dive into all the aspects of it and discuss it as we go. But Society is a body horror film directed by Brian Yuzna and starring Billy Warlock, Devin DeVasquez, Evan Richards, and Ben Meyerson. Its plot follows a Beverly Hills teenager who begins to suspect that his wealthy parents are part of a gruesome cult for the social elite. Though the film was completed in 1989, it was not released until 1992. It was Yuzna's directorial debut and was written by Rick Fry, conceived and written by Woody Keith. So there's a little bit of background on it. Johnathan requested I go first, so I'm going to go ahead and dive in. I gave the story, the plot, a 3, which is good. I actually... There's a famous scene at the end of this movie that it's going to be hard to talk about this movie without addressing this scene, but we're going to get to it. It's kind of like this scene was, even watching it, thinking back on it, this scene was the idea that the rest of the movie formed around. It was this wacky out there scene. And in some ways, the story kind of feels like that. It was like, how can we have this secret society, underground cult for the elites? And what can we do to reveal this? And so in some ways, the story feels a little haphazard. In some ways, I actually thought they did a really good job with it, and I was pretty intrigued. I was aware of this famous scene and aware of this movie, but I never actually sat down and watched it. So I went down that rabbit hole, and I was actually following along, and I was surprised at kind of the uniqueness of it. Secret societies aren't super unique, but they combine that kind of secret society aspect with that unreliable narrator in our main character. Where is he paranoid? Is he seeing things? Is he losing his mind, or is all of this really happening? And they did a nice job kind of hooking me in. It wasn't great. It's not amazing, but I had a good time with it. So story and plot, I gave it a 3.
Okay, yeah. I feel the same on that. I've seen a lot of crazy different kind of horror films in my years, and especially throughout the 80s and 90s. I saw stuff as a child for horror movies that I should not have seen at such a young age, clearly. I'm such a weirdo now, but that's beside the point. But yeah, I mean, just the story overall, I didn't really think of it as much in the terms of exposing, special club society, like kind of like underground stuff so much as just the fact that, I mean, it's hard to explain. Like, I wasn't really expecting much of it because, like, I saw the trailer and I was kind of like, okay, maybe sort of. But then as you get more into it, and the story starts to unfold more, then it becomes a little bit more enjoyable. At first, because I've had a lot of harsh criticisms about some stuff, but with the story overall, once you get through the whole film, it's like, okay, that was a pretty decent story. Not quite the direction I was going to thought it was going to go, but still cool for what it was, but still not super amazing, not something that's going to really catch you and stick in your mind for a long time.
Yeah. So then jumping into character, this one, I was mostly surprised by this movie because usually when I hear about this movie, I hear about the shunting. Okay. The scene at the end is called the shunting. That's kind of what everybody talks about when they talk about this movie, but not this. The character arc is really, I actually thought it was pretty good. Again, it's this silly idea of a film, really. And they put some good stuff into it to make it a little bit more watchable than, but we have this son of these wealthy elites. And really the whole time he's struggling with feeling that he's not really part of the family. And it's not super in deep. It's not great. They're not going to win any awards for the character arc here. But there is kind of like that turmoil of he doesn't really feel part of his family and he's worried his family is involved with something that he doesn't agree with. And he has to go on this journey in that arc of discovering what that is and discovering who he is in it. It's not top-notch quality, but it's also not, it's not really an afterthought. It is kind of how we get through this film, is following this boy's story. So I gave it a 3. I thought it was a good character arc for him.
I'm still same page on that. I still went with a 3. I kind of kept that mid range, but not too low. Like I said, it's an 80s film, so it wasn't really a big film when it came out. So the talent's not going to be super amazing exactly, but with how the characters developed and the way you see it, how things change throughout the story of the movie, I thought it was okay. There was some stuff that was kind of odd and kind of weird and quirky that maybe could have done without, or certain things that could have improved on as far as the characters. But as a whole, it was decent.
Yeah, I think I forgot to mention about how the main character walks this fine line of being unlikable and still likable at the same time. He says a lot of really snooty things about his upbringing, but at the same time, you kind of feel bad for him. Like, I'm not even sure if it was mentioned that, like, I was thinking he was adopted, and it might have been because 3 of the characters were blonde and he is the only brunette in his family. And I was like, that kid's adopted. He's like, that's going to be the storyline here. But
I thought same thing. Yeah. That was one of the first things I went to.
Yeah. When we get the resolution of that and we find out that he actually is not, spoiler alert, he's not part of that family, which I'm pretty sure we're going to talk about that scene mostly in the special effects category.
Oh, there's so many things we could say. And about more than a couple of scenes in regards to the family.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Music and sound design. This is one that I don't have a whole lot to say on this one. This one usually goes by pretty quickly. It's got the typical 80s synth horror score. Mm-hmm. But the part that I love is when they use it, I'm going to say it wrong, the Eaton Boating song, or Eaton Boating song, is used throughout the film, and especially in the climactic shunting scene. It is used almost to like comic, but also extremely unsettling effect. And it was used beautifully. It's also used in the opening credits, but it's almost a parody of the song where they have changed the words to fit the narrative of the story. I thought that was pretty clever. The rest of the music is not super memorable, or no. Yeah, it's not worth it. but using the Eton Eaton boating song, I actually really enjoyed that choice for those scenes.
Okay, well, so the soundtrack didn't do much for me. Like you said, it's your typical 80s synth stuff. So,
Yeah.
I mean, you hear that through all the 80s, early 90s stuff. So it doesn't really make much of an impact, doesn't really stick in your brain, with the exception of like the one song, that used in multiple parts there. But, so I kind of worry about them overusing it to a point where because like it just becomes like, okay, why do they keep using the same tune? Like, why aren't they changing it? Wasn't there more to the soundtrack? But as long as they use it in the appropriate places, then it's not so bad. But overall, not anything that really stands out as special music wise.
Yeah, I tend to go like it stays in the positive category as long as there was nothing that was like, ooh, that was a bad choice or really took me out of the film. This movie doesn't really have it. It's really just background synth atmosphere until the important scenes when we get the Eaton boating song. That's about it for this soundtrack. It's solid. It's not something you're going to find on Spotify and listen to in the car.
Yeah, I mean, there wasn't really anything about it that was memorable. Like I said, it's just I didn't really even acknowledge it was there because I'm trying to figure out so much about what's going on in the story.
Yeah, I totally agree. On the same page for that one. So far, we've been on the same page for most of it. All right, so editing and special effects, we are breezing through this. Editing and special effects, this is the movie right here. I gave it a 4. The special effects in this movie are by Japanese special effects makeup artist Screaming Mad George. Also did the special effects for, I believe it was Big Trouble in Little China.
Dude has lots of credits. He was huge.
Yes.
He's one of the premier special effects artists throughout the 80s and early 90s. So the dude's a legend in his own right through that time period.
Absolutely. He's incredible artist. So we're going to dive into the shunting here. Most of the film has very little in terms of special effects. Yeah. I actually, to touch on editing quickly before I dive into that, I actually really appreciated the beginning kind of dream sequence in it because it's edited like a slasher film and you're like heavy shadows, the particular angles, the way we're watching the character go through the house is set up to make us believe that this movie is going to be a slasher. And then it is definitely not. But Brian Usna also comes from, he was a producer for movies like Reanimator. Yeah. So he's known for some crazy out there, gory special effects films. And this movie is a departure for that. Screaming Mad George comes in and they used some paintings of Salvador Dali actually for influence. Yes.
Okay. I can get with that.
I have the titles of them. I don't know if I can find them real quick. But anyways, yeah. So in the shunting in this film, basically we find out that our main character actually is not adopted per se, but he's not part of the family. He was basically born and raised to be a sacrifice for the society. He's not even the same race as them. But what this race is, I have no idea what this race is. They don't tell us. It doesn't say it's alien. I believe there's a line mentioned about how it's kind of ancient, been here since the beginning of time.
Correct. They said that they were not aliens. They said specifically they were not aliens and that they'd been there since before, as long as they have.
Okay. Yeah. So again, you can go down rabbit trails of conspiracy theorists and what this movie still remains relevant as far as social class storylines go and the people out there who believe that there might be secret societies running the government. Just throwing that out. But this society participates in something called the shunting. And what happens, I don't know how to explain exactly.
I think I can.
Oh, okay. If you want to
take a shot at it.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so basically with the shunting it's like everyone, like, they don't have a name for it necessarily, but for the society, but it's just the society. So even though we don't know what race they are specifically, they're just society.
Yeah.
And basically what it boils down to is when they do the shunting, they become like an amorphous amalgamation of all of them together. It's like their bones somehow either go just straight soft or dissolve as they kind of become like this putrefaction. They just kind of melt down and they join together for pleasure. And as part of the shunting, when they have their sacrifice, they will bring them into the shunting and suck everything out of them until there's nothing left of them. And that's part of where they derive their joy from. And it's a weird kind of like, it seems like just kind of a crazy orgy thing. And it pretty much is.
Yeah.
Because they're just deriving so much pleasure because all of their bodies are all connected through all their nerve endings through just this giant amorphous blob that they become while they absorb somebody.
It's complete with way too much jelly.
Yes.
A lot of squelching and sucking and liquid sounds. And you get the full effect.
It's evocative for sure.
Oh, it's also, I can't really explain. I'm pretty sure my wife was horrified. I was both unsettled because it is this group of people who are like melting into each other while basically absorbing another human into them. And you're watching that human like shrivel and decay while alive. And it's unsettling. And at the same time, we're getting that Eaton Boating song playing and it's kind of humorous. And it's very dark, kind of a little funny. Some of the morphing that these bodies do later. The famous scene from this movie is I Guess I Am a Butthead, where the guy literally has he literally has a head in his butt. It's wild. So it's very dark, almost tongue in cheek sense of humor for this whole scene. But yeah.
It's like with that like when you see that beginning sequence of the movie, the intro sequence, yeah, it definitely it's at first I was like, man, why is it so dark? Because you see that in a few spots in the film, but it's like, you think it's some kind of like slasher, weird gore, someone's rubbing like blood and stuff all over themselves, like they just killed somebody, only to find out no, that's not just one, but that's a whole bunch of people just getting super freaky in this weird blob thing.
Yeah,
and it's weird because with the special effects. Because you don't, like I said, you said earlier, you don't see a lot of the special effects in the film. You get the one part where you see this, where Billy's walking in trying to grab some lotion, his sister's in the shower, and he sees that she's standing backwards, but it looks like that she is her chest on her back.
Yeah, yeah.
And then you see the part where the guy he's running against for student body president, he sees him in the car. It looks like his throat is slit, but the dude's actually alive the next day.
Yep. And there's the little bladder effect in the sister's back when he's zipping up her dress and her back bulges. Yeah,
that was weird.
There's just these little hints that, and you're like, man, something's not right. And they're all those little effects are so good that they don't, like, you're not distracted by them. You're not like, wow, that effect was either so bad or so good. You're like, what is going on here? And it's really pretty fantastic. There's also that, the scene at the party, the sex scene at the party where the girl has two right hands. And then the next scene, he like freaks out, flips out of bed, and she's like twisted around, kind of legs upside down. Yeah. But then you get into that shunting scene at the end and the special effects take center stage. This was the scene that clearly the movie was built around. They were like, we want to do this. Apparently it was based on dreams the director had when he was younger.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Probably want to see a therapist about that. But it's really just a wild idea. And Screamin' Mad George did an incredible job making it happen. This is something that I don't think CGI would not look right.
No,
it would not look right. It would not have the same feel. And there is moments in this where you're like, oh, that's not the actress's face. That's a mold. Yeah. But it's not about that actress's face. It's about what's going on in that scene. Or like, okay, when the guy shoves his hands all the way up through the person's body out their mouth.
Oh, and then through the eyes with the fingers, pops out the eyes and stuff. Oh,
it
crazy.
Doesn't look 100% real, but it's enough to make you realize what's happening and be a little bit uncomfortable about it. But also,
it was a cool effect.
It's a cool effect. It is so good. And then that scene is that shot, not the shot, the action is repeated at the end when our main character turns somebody inside out.
Yeah, that was wild. Awesome. I love that part so much. That was like one of my favorite parts. Somebody's like, yeah, just rip him inside out, bro.
Yeah. It's so good. It's like, this is the reason to watch this film, in all honesty. There's not much to, it's a Beverly Hills drama for the first hour. And then the last 30 minutes, Beverly Hills teen drama, to be clear. And then the last 30 minutes goes off the rails with somebody's head being replaced with a hand, somebody's arms being used as feet, the butt head, the shunting. It's endless. It's a dream world to just make you feel unsettled. It's wild. I loved it. I got to that scene. I was like, this is amazing.
Well, yeah, because you see the bedroom scene where Billy walks in while he's trying to escape everybody downstairs, and you see Mom laying in bed, Nan, who's just laying there doing nothing, just like, oh, hey, hands are out. And then it turns out, you find out that his sister is absorbed with her, and when they come out of bed, you see the weird amalgamation that the two of them are. And then you see Dad pop out, and he looks like that character from this weird cartoon they used to have, I think it was on Adult Swim, it was called Assy McGee, where the dude is just legs and a butt and talks out of his rear. And that's what Dad is, and it's like, hey, I guess you were right. I am a butthead.
It's amazing.
Oh, my, it's so nuts. And then the psychiatrist that we see in the beginning of the movie that, tries to guide Billy through everything, you see him and his head, his head turns into that giant hand. And then he has the arm that stretches out looks like it's going to flick him before he goes to the door into the bedroom and sees Mom and Dad and all them.
Yep. And on top of that entire shunting scene and all that, it's filmed with like a red lens over it, or a red filter, because everything, it just adds to that little bit of like the sound design on this. I didn't mention that in the music. The sound design on this for this scene specifically is another reason to give it a 3. For as forgettable as the music is, the sound is gross. The squelching and liquid sounds that you just don't like. They're not enjoyable sounds, and they did such a good job of that. But then filming it with that red lens also is just another unsettling choice that was so good. Such a good choice.
Danger.
Yeah. Did you give your score for this? Did we agree?
Oh, I gave the editing, the special effects a 4.
Yeah. So
because
they're great.
Yeah, because like I said earlier, you got to remember that this is a movie that was made originally 1989. So it's not going to be the same as what you get today. Things were way grittier. It was mostly practical effects that you would see. You wouldn't see much in the way of anything computer generated. So working with what they had to pull this off, and seeing all the stretchy bits of everyone connecting together, the mouths attached to another person, it was so bizarre. But with the way they set it up, it worked out pretty well for that whole group scene for the shunting.
Oh yeah, I would prefer. This is a case where I prefer the practical effects every day, any day in any movie. And this scene just like, to pull this off, it's amazing. It's fantastic.
It made me think of the kind of weird like stuff you'd see in like anime from like the 80s and 90s if you're watching that. Because you know how like some of those had really bizarre things with bodies, being just morphing into different shapes and crazy things. Seeing that made me think so much of that. And with it being Screaming Mad George doing the effects, then of course, there's a big connection there, it seems like.
Yeah, definitely. That's a connection I did not think of. And that makes a ton of sense. So we both give this a 4, and I want to jump into script here. I gave the script a 2. I actually, in hindsight, I'm wanting to bring that up because as we're talking about it, I'm thinking about all the little script elements throughout this film that were actually really clever that led to the shunting scene. I don't think the script's not necessarily brilliant, but there's the movie itself at the beginning is really uncomfortable because it's giving off like this brother main character is discovering or believes he is discovering that his family is part of an incestuous cult. And there's definitely weird relationship with like the father, mother, and daughter. And they talk about her coming out party. And then his friend brings over a recording that he had bugged her earring or something, and brings over a recording, and they're talking about basically doing it with each other. And what the doing it that they're referring to is the shunting, but it's really kind of an unsettling, like, is this an incestuous family? It's very,
taboo.
yeah,
Taboo, you thinking?
Yeah, it's very uncomfortable, but it's also very darkly funny throughout the entire movie. I thought there were many, like, being darkly funny. It's not always laugh out loud jokes. It's very tongue in cheek jokes. Like, it's not taking itself super seriously. It's having a good time with what it's doing, but also trying to keep you interested and keep you a little bit off balance.
Well, yeah, because you're thinking it's human family taboo, but hey, they're not human. They're totally weird. So this is normal for them.
Yeah.
It's weirdly bizarre, because you think that, through the beginning, there's some spots with the dialogue where there's some issues, but there's some other parts where it's very great. Telling that leads up to the whole thing with the shunting. Because like in the beginning, there's the line where, after you get through the opening sequence and then you see Billy talking to his therapist about everything he always feels alone, he doesn't belong. And then the psychiatrist is talking. He looks at him, he's like, you're going to get what you deserve. You know that, right? And he's like, what? And he's like, you're going to make such an amazing or a great contribution to society. Not for, but to.
Yeah.
So once I heard that, I was like, oh, he's going to get sacrificed or some kind of stuff. That dude is he's going to bite the big one in the end, man.
Yep. And it's something that, the first time I'm watching it, I'm not picking up on these little cues. And then in hindsight, I go back and I think about it and I'm like, that was actually way more clever than it deserved to be. Like it was so much fun, so well thought out. Again, it's not a masterpiece of a film. It's not revolutionary. It is a darkly comedic, tongue-in-cheek look at classism, secret societies, however you want to take this route. But it's a good time. That's the best way I can describe it.
There's a few parts.
Oh, yeah. Do you want to dive into script more, or was that about all you had to say for it?
Well, I mean, let's see. I don't know, like just some of the dialogue just felt kind of flat for me in a lot of spots, especially when it came to like his contention when talking with his parents.
I would agree. Like, yeah.
The dialogue between him and the sister character was pretty decent overall. But then like some of the stuff with his friend seemed kind of cheesy, but I mean, maybe that was the intention.
The friend who actually
Milo
becomes the sacrifice.
No. That was Blanchard, the friend who was dating his sister.
Okay.
They thought died in the car accident.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Blanchard was a whole other thing, man. At first, you think the dude's a super creep because he shows up at the beginning of the movie, and then his sister was like out the window talking to him and Milo, like, "Hey, could you go stop him? Don't tell him to go away." And then before they're even in the house, apparently, dude has somehow snuck into her room without her knowing it and is hiding in her closet. I was like, what? That just seems ridiculous to me, but I don't know, that's whatever. And like, to think that they're friends after the fact, and it's like, it didn't seem like that at first. He just seemed like some guy that was just being a creep.
Right.
Not that he was a friend with him necessarily.
Right. And that was one of those scenes that, the first time I'm watching it, I'm like, 80s trope, like somebody peeking the voyeurism aspect of watching her change, hiding in the closet. But then later down the road, you find out that he was actually there for a reason, that he's kind of been on to this society and he was bugging the sister to, I was like, man, such a little scene that I thought was just going to be like played for laughs, basically. And it actually had some significance on leading the brother down the path that he goes on.
Oh, dude, it sent him spiraling.
Yeah. And then, to repeat it so he brings the brother that tape and they listen to it under the boardwalk. And it was, in an incestuous situation, it's gross what is being said. And then you get to the later scene after the brother has dropped the tape off with his psychiatrist and the tape is completely different.
Then he's in on it. It's like,
yes,
son of a gun. It's solidified. Now for a fact, this dude is in on the game.
Yep. See, there's all these great moments, and then the script also falters because we have not mentioned an entire side storyline with like the brother's girlfriend and the parties at the beach and the party at the pool house. And that really, it's the script in those moments I thought was when it's at its weakest, when it's that typical arrogant kid on the beach who's talking down to him all the time. I'm like, yeah, this is nothing special to me. It eventually ends up that he's part of it too, but it still just wasn't that fantastic. So we're pretty much in agreement on the script. 3.
Yeah. Then the drama between the main character, Billy, and his girlfriend, Shauna, it's kind of weak sauce.
Yes.
I mean, it had its part to play in the story, throughout it once he started hooking up with Deb DeVasquez's character.
Yep. Wasn't she a playgirl?
I don't know, but I have seen Devin DeVasquez in other films. One of my favorite movies from that era, House 2, The Second Story.
Okay, I loved House 1, and then when I watched House 2, I was like, what is this? So I need to give it a second chance.
I loved House 2. I love House 1. I love them both. And there's actually 4 films. Please don't watch 3 and 4. They're just god awful. Just stay away from it.
It's but like Hellraiser after some point in Hellraiser, you just should not show up anymore.
Yeah, just give it up. Just give it up.
Yeah.
But Devin DeVasquez, though, she's fantastic. I like her. And most of the people that you see in the film, they're not amazing, but you see some faces and you're like, oh, I recognize that person from something. Just like the friend Milo. I recognize him from other stuff too.
Yeah. So then let's actually touch on the acting while we're here. It seems we're headed that direction anyways. I gave the acting a 3, which might be a little harsh. I thought the acting was good. I thought our lead there were moments when I was like, oh, he's Zac Efron. And then there were moments when I was like, I'm getting Michael J. Fox vibes from him. So,
definitely.
Yeah.
I was getting that a lot from Billy Whitlock.
Yes. He balanced. I don't want to say he balanced it because it didn't feel balanced. It was he kind of had that Zac Efron thing going sometimes. And then he had the Michael J. Fox thing going. Obviously, the Michael J. Fox stuff was way more endearing and made me like him. The whole time he's also looking like Uncle Jesse's younger brother from Full House,
Yeah, he definitely had that going on. But I definitely I see him in some of those scenes, the way he was acting. I definitely thought Michael J. Fox, and then my brain, I just automatically went to Teen Wolf.
Yes, another great film.
Yeah, it is fantastic. Yep. And Teen Wolf 2, also a great film.
Yes. But that's kind of where the acting felt for me. That's why I gave it a 3. Those Michael J. Fox moments were endearing and fun and great performance. But then some of those Zac Efron moments were just kind of dry and cardboardy. But the supporting cast overall just looks like they're there to have a good time. They are tearing up the shunting scene. The parents are playing their parts with such just a tongue-in-cheek attitude that they are not taking themselves seriously because they know who they are, and he's losing his mind and he's about to be their sacrifice. They don't really care that he's losing his mind. They just gently reassure him and move on. And it's thoroughly enjoyable. But again, there's no depth to the performances. It's just a ton of fun.
It is. There's a lot. There's a lot of comical stuff. There's some things that you kind of enjoy out of it, but you definitely see with the acting direction overall. Everybody had some weird stuff going on a little bit here and there. like the psychiatrist guy, he was pretty spot on with his thing.
He was pretty good.
Role. He seemed like someone who was like genuinely in that as a, to be the psychiatrist. He was believable, And then the parents, I don't know, the parents, that whole acting with them fell kind of flat. It seemed more of like a laissez-faire gaslighting kind of thing.
Yes,
it's like they're
definitely
trying to like, oh, not a big deal, blah blah. But it doesn't seem like there was a lot of force and a lot of intent in it. That you want to see when someone's giving a performance. But some other people, you get a lot of you guys are going to remember. Like I said, this movie came out in late '89, and the acting at that time, and it's with it being kind of a B film. You get B film acting for the most part, with a few moments here and there where things are pretty good. Yes. So like Evan Richards as Milo, I think he did an okay job. He did a pretty decent job as a friend, and with the way he played that role. And then dude that played Blanchard, Tim Bartell, he was okay. He worked out pretty decent as being like a weird dude who seems like a conspiracy nut who's starting to freak out that people don't want to associate with. But then, Billy was already that as the main character. He just was more exacerbated with his paranoia and his unsureness about what's going on around him and his place in the family dynamic. Devin Vasquez as Clarissa, she was pretty good. She didn't have a lot of dialogue necessarily until like more through the halfway part of the film, and especially towards the end. But she didn't really have to, because she was more there for the look and the action of it. But she still, even with the role she played, I still thought it was a good job. The Shauna girlfriend just was a bit too cheesy, over the top for like an 80s high school thing. Like I said, maybe that's the intention. That's the Hollywood, Beverly Hills drama, blah, 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 blah.
Yep.
Overall, the cast wasn't too bad. And then most of those people are usually like bit players anyway. If you look at any of their catalogs, most of them were in a few small production film stuffs and maybe produced a few things, but didn't really go as far as that past the mid 90s or late 90s. So, I mean, there's not really you could expect out of the whole crew in general. And it's fine for what it was, but the way they acted, though, when it came to the shunting, and once everything was exposed and they were out and Billy knew what was up and what they were, then things got a little more crazy, a little more comical, and a lot more fun once you hit that point.
Yeah, that's when you see the psychiatrist character pull like a complete 180 and just hams up the rest of the film.
He hams it so hard.
Oh yeah, and actually, Devin DeVasquez's character is about the only one from the society who develops a conscience, and she kind of has that soft spot for the main character.
Oh, they don't even like explain why Devin Vasquez, Clarissa's mom, is nuts. They don't even dive into that. She's just there as like a weird lump who's also part of society, but like does her own weird thing because she's like cuckoo in the Cocoa Puffs or something. We don't know. They don't even explain any part of that or what happened with that. And Clarissa's dynamic with the family home, and that part was kind of weird for me as part of the story goes. Yeah, so I would have liked to learn a little more on the back end of that.
Yeah, what was the mom story? Because the mom was definitely not well explained. So
don't touch the hair.
Yeah, let's dive into direction then, because I gave the direction a 2, which is a little harsh, especially after I praised the film this much. But as we were just diving into there's a lot in this movie that doesn't always make sense. And that is because the director, it was his first time directing. That doesn't detract from the quality. He was focused on the surrealism of the situation. It's often said that anybody who works with practical effects, that during a practical effect shot, the artist of the effect is the director, not the director of the film. And Yuzna came from that background with, I already said Reanimator and films like that. But this was his first directorial debut, and the film's just well done. It's not anything fantastic for the beginning, but then when those practical effects come in, the directing steps up a notch. But I did take off because there's a lot that doesn't make sense, like the mom. And then also just why, I'm not even sure it's exactly explained why the girlfriend or the second girlfriend's interest, why she kind of develops a soft spot halfway through when the rest of society does not. Why does one of them kind of build this conscience conscience.
Yeah, nobody explains that. It's like, what the heck, man? Come on,
Yeah,
give us some fill here.
Yeah, so as great and as fun as this movie is far from perfect. There's really not, outside of the special effects shots, there's really not much to write home about as far as direction goes.
Right, like the one scene where they're at the funeral for Blanchard and his rival for the school presidency comes up to him, talks to him. It's like they go straight from after that, straight to him pulling up into the woods. There could have been maybe a roadway shot showing him traveling to destination, just to kind of give that sense of time lapse instead of just a straight jump cut from funeral to the woods, from him parking and his buddy pulling up behind him unknown. And then there's like some other parts of that where like the way they line things up just seemed kind of off. And I really wish like there were some scenes that they'd done a little bit different stuff with the lighting. They said, of course, like I said, being the late 80s, cameras weren't as sophisticated as they are now. So, I mean, yeah, they maybe had to do what they could with certain places. But I just, I wish they could have done a little bit more with the lighting and maybe done some more kind of camera work to help express more of Billy's paranoia. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yo, I know exactly what you mean. So, and funny that you're saying that. I was watching this thinking I would actually love a remake of this done by the right person.
Okay.
Have you seen Hereditary and Midsummer?
No, I have not.
Okay. Or his most recent one was Beau is Afraid, but Ari Aster is the director, and he is fantastic at very dark humor, but creating very unsettling atmospheres and environments. And I'm like, man, I actually think with his skill level to approach this same story, it would be a totally different film. It would probably be one of the hardest films to watch because of just his style. But it's a story that I think you could remake in an interesting way. And again, like we talked about, keeping it practical, but there's something here that I think the director just missed a little bit. And I think in better hands, this would have been wildly, unsettling is not the right word because it's already unsettling, but I don't know. I think, like we've said, he just missed a couple of spots here. There's some tension that's missing early in the film and so on.
Okay, so I haven't seen Beau is Afraid, but I've watched the trailer. I want to watch that movie. It looks like a super trip. So
it is
I'm definitely down to watch that. But what I've seen from the trailer, with regards to the story and the effects and like how they lit it up, yes, if the guy who did that did a remake of this, that could be pretty awesome. And I'd be super down to watch that. I'd be all for it.
Yeah. He's just got that unique style that I think he could pull this off where most other directors couldn't. So then that can actually lead to the it factor, the cultural significance of this film. I gave it a 2. The film, we kind of touched on it at the beginning. It was released in the UK 3 years before it was released in the States. And then when it was released, it basically just flopped at the box office. It did nothing. It was more successful in the UK than it was here. And it hasn't been until recently that it's kind of developed that cult following of fans.
Understandable. It's there's a lot of films like that from that time period that people have a lot of cult followings for. But I mean, the thing that gets me the most though overall is the ending. Like the ending fell so flat for me. I don't know about you, but like they managed to make their way out. Him, his friend Milo, and his now new girlfriend, who's part of society, Clarissa, and they just hop in a Jeep, roll out early morning, like whatever. And we don't know anything that happens after that. Like,
that's it.
Where's the resolution? I mean, yeah, they escaped, and yeah, there's society all over the place, unbeknownst to us. But I would have expected more for an ending other than just hopping in the Jeep and rolling out super hard.
Yeah. So there was a sequel planned, actually, as late as 2013.
Oh.
I don't know what happened to that, but it was called Society Body Modifications.
Okay.
I don't know what happened to that. Apparently there is a sequel comic book series that I have never heard of, and I want to try to find it now. But yeah, I agree. It's also one of those 80s films that just ends. They escape the situation and it's over with zero resolution. Basically, Billy just found out that his family's gone. What is he going to do? What is he going home to? He has a member of society with him. How does she? There's a lot of unanswered questions.
Okay, so it was a comic book series, Scottish comic book company, Rough Cut Comics. Okay. They acquired the rights in 2002 to produce an official sequel. And then the series returned in 2003 with Society Party Animal by Colin Barr and artist Shelby Robertson. They did, looks like, I think, 2 issues.
Huh.
Yeah, so that's what I got on that. I don't know anything more than that.
Well, now I want to read them, though.
I know, right? Yeah, I'm curious.
We're going to find them. Yeah. I also kind of struggled finding this movie. Where did you said it was streaming on?
Yeah, I saw it was streaming on Plex. I just looked up Society for free. Yeah, Googled it, and it gave me a few options of stuff to check out, and I just happened to have that app I could load on my TV, and so busted it up. It says Crackle when you play it, but it shows platforms Plex.
Oh, gotcha, Crackle. I think
it's on Sling also.
Okay, I ended up doing like a 1-week trial of Screambox so I could watch it. But now I'm looking into, like, I've subscribed to Shudder for years now.
I've got good stuff on there.
Yes. But now I'm looking at Arrow Video, which does remasters of a lot of these old 80s, 90s, 70s, even cult movies. They do high definition remasters and re-releases on Blu-ray. They actually started a streaming service that I didn't realize until after I'd watched it that this movie was available on it, called Arrow Player. But now I'm looking into that. I'm like, man, I want to watch some more of these trippy, wild movies.
Oh, dude, you can find such a plethora of crazy yet somewhat like comical horror films from the 80s and early 90s. There's so many. Have you ever heard of Sleepaway Camp?
Oh, yeah. I just made my wife watch that with me on our vacation.
Oh, my goodness. Have you watched the other Sleepaway Camp movies?
I watched 2 and started 3.
Okay. I think there's 4 or 5.
Yeah. Yeah.
And man, that's actually one of my favorite campy like horror films of like the 80s, 90s.
Yep. And Sleepaway Camp, the first one is not one that you could remake today in today's society. No. Nope. But,
people would lose their gourd.
Yep. And then what's one of my favorite franchises? Anyways, we'll move on from that. But there's
Puppet Master.
What?
Puppet Master.
It's a great one. That's one
of my favorite series
of productions, right?
Yeah, I've got the whole collection. There's like 10 films. There was even one, I think it was like number 9 or 10. Corey Feldman was in it. I was like, what?
Really?
Oh, yeah. Wow. I got the whole collection. It's crazy, but it's like one of my favorite series of horror films next to Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yep. And oh man, Nightmare on Elm Street. I love those. I love the Jason movies. I'm a Jason fan.
Freddy's my number 1 guy. Always will be.
Yeah, he's just
the campiness.
Yes, he's fantastic. Wonderful. I just think there's so many. Unfortunately, there's so many more Friday the 13th movies. I still think the first. Here's the people will be angry in the comments on this, but every Friday the 13th sequel is better than the original. Like, I don't think the original Friday the 13th is that good. I think it's a Psycho ripoff. And then everything after that is just a ton of fun. Actually, Stephen King's son, Joe Hill, said it best, describing the slasher boom of the 80s. He said, it's really just slapstick.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm like, basically. Yeah, I get it.
It's horror slapstick. Chase and kill, chase and kill, chase and kill.
Yep.
How do we go about it? How long does it take us to do it?
Yep. And I don't think it's that scary. There's very little scare to it. It's just atmosphere and strange fun. Okay.
Oh, yeah. Then there's others like Creep Show. I think there's like a couple of those. And then Tales from the Dark Side.
Oh, yeah. The anthologies
for those.
Shudder has they revitalized Creepshow.
Oh, all right.
They just released season 4 in time for Halloween. I've been having a good time with that. Yeah. So
it's a series, not just a movie.
Yep.
Oh,
is it?
It was a series.
Am I saying the wrong thing?
Because back in the 80s, there was Creepshow and Creepshow 2. Yeah. And it was like multiple stories in one movie.
Yep. So Shudder brought it back, and they're now 4 seasons deep. Same idea, Creepshow. It's 2 stories an episode, so like 25 minutes each. They bring in some pretty big names sometimes. They kicked off season 4. You know who Mike Flanagan is?
Oh, I swear to God, I do. I've seen him before.
Okay. He directed last big movie was Dr. Sleep with Ewan McGregor, the sequel to The Shining.
Wait, that was a sequel?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And then he did the TV series for Netflix, Midnight Mass, Haunting of Hill House, and he just released the Edgar Allan Poe adaptation of The Fall of the House of Usher. So he's been in the horror community. He's probably one of my favorite modern horror directors, but he directed the first story in the first episode for season 4. And they get some big names for it. Creepshow's definitely worth checking out.
Well, Flanagan was born in Salem, Massachusetts.
So he was destined.
Kind of makes sense.
He was destined for this. All right. So we got sidetracked there, but that's okay. That's what this is about. All right. So diving in, my entertainment level for this film, 8 out of 10. Honestly, I had a great time with this film, flaws and all. I think it had just enough flaws to remind me that it was an 80s film. It's not perfect by any stretch, but it also was just a ton of fun. I had a ton of fun with it. 8 out of 10.
For me, I gave it a 6 out of 10. For me, like I said, I grew up watching a lot of stuff like this, so it's totally a B film for me. It wasn't bad. I mean, it just wasn't amazing. Mm-hmm. But with some of the acting and with some of the direction, it's more what put me at a 6. And then there's the horrible ending.
Yeah, that's totally fair.
Yeah.
Totally fair. All right. So my total score, adding up all of those together, that puts me at a 31, which would be, I always have to remember this, which is not good. 31 puts it at the top of okay. 31 to 35 is good.
Okay. Yeah. Mine looks like mine added up to the same, a total of 31.
Okay.
Looks like we were pretty much spot on for most of it for category.
All right.
Exceptions there. So
that makes averaging this out really easy. And it's ideally what the average is going to do is going to give us an idea of how these movies work in social situations. It depends on the crowd you're with, but it's an okay movie for social situations. It's not a good one for social situations. There are going to be a lot of people turned off by a lot of this movie. So they're either
know your crowd.
Yeah, know your crowd you're with. If you're with those 80s horror lovers, the practical effects lovers,
then they'll be all for it.
Yeah. Yes, put this movie on. That changes the score entirely. But if you're with a general crowd for Halloween, this is one you might want to steer away from. And it's not because the movie itself is bad. It's just going to be really hard for some people to get into, and whether that's because of the 80s Beverly Hills drama at the beginning that some people just will think is too cheesy for right now, or because it's the shunting scene at the end that some people want nothing to do with.
It threw me off when they said shunting. I'm like, wait, did I just hear that right? They call it shunting? What? Totally threw me off when I heard that. I'm so confused at first.
Yeah. Do you know what shunting is?
I have no clue.
So shunting is a medical term, actually. I'm going to see if I can find it.
Oh, is that like a thing where they like for heart valves or something? Or am I thinking something different?
No, I think
they put in a shunt
right.
for something.
Yeah. So a shunt. Well, that's different. Anyways. What does a shunting mean medically? A shunt is a hollow tube surgically placed in the brain or occasionally in the spine to help drain cerebral spinal fluid and redirect it to another location in the body where it can be reabsorbed. So that just changes what's happening in that final scene. Now I understand they are sucking up the cerebrospinal fluid and
other material.
But yes. So that explains why they call it the shunting there at the end.
Okay, I can work with that.
Yep. All right. Well, Johnathan, I think that wraps us up for this episode. We managed, once we hit the special effects, we dragged this episode out. Perfect.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
I'm all for it.
All right. Well, thank you for joining. I hope you had a good time. Thank you
for having me.
Yep. I had a good time talking. So for those of you following along, this will be night 9 of our 13 nights of Halloween. So we have just a couple more nights to get you through, a couple more guests coming up, I think they're great films coming up. So make sure that you are subscribed, whether it's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Rumble, whatever, pick your poison. Subscribe so you don't miss an episode on the next couple. Johnathan, thanks for joining.
Tim, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
Yep. Hopefully you join us again someday.